Hello. Today we will discuss one task which actually was my test task on some process of applying to some company. The technical description of task is you have to implement the web server which will receive the requests which can have some amount of tags from 1 up to infinity, and then for each tag it have to request Stack Overflow by some API with this tag as filter, and then combine all the results given by all the tags and return it as a response on initial request. But there are two limitations and requirements for this task. First of all the possible requests should be done in parallel. But on the same time, there are a limit on open HTTP connections, and every time the maximum amount of open HTTP connections cannot be more than given value. So looks like a clear explained task, and every one of you who are interested in implementation and trying yourself in it, please stop the video and try to implement it yourself. But we may continue. When I got this task, I initially thought about my own bicycles. So what do I mean? Which approach can I implement by myself with all low-level interactions with all semaphores, atoms, blockers, and so on and so forth. There are two alternative ways. First of all, we have so-called parallel map. And if we split the initial tags by the chunks, for example, of 3, if the maximum HTTP connections is 3, then we can do all on parallel map of each chunk, and it allows us to make all the queries in parallel, and at the same time limit the maximum amount of threads open in HTTP connections, and therefore on the open HTTP connections at all. But there is a disadvantage of this approach, of this solution. Let's imagine that every third request will takes much longer time than others. For example, when we start do all and parallel map on first chunk, the first two requests finished in a short time, and all the system will wait until the third request will finish. Yep. And then if it finished, then we will cut another chunk of 3 requests, and also first 2 of them will finish in a short time, and we again will wait until the third request will finish. It's not an efficient way, because actually every time we have only one complex long request. But there are another ways, and one of them, from my point of view, is so looks so nice, so I decided to share you it. First of all, I wanna tell you that I had no experience with CoreAsync library before this task, and that was my first experience. And first of all, I tried to Google and read the documentation about its primitives, about its conventions, and which it provides. And it provides so-called channels. You can use channels and put value on channel, get value from channel. Channels put and get operations, usually they blocks the flow of program evaluation, so we can use it. But the main trick and the main point in it, I found out that we may use it in not a regular way. What do I mean? For example, let's evaluate a mock function which emulates a long HTTP request. Yep. And then we have two functions, two implementations, using Go blocks and using futures. Not used thread pool built in and so on, so not so effective as Go blocks, but I'll explain you later why we have to compare these two approaches. But the main point is that we in regular cycle do sequence for our tags. We first of all we put in so-called connection channel any value. It may be any trash value, just primitive value of number 1, number 0, number 42, string blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. Because then later we just get the value from the channel and do not rely on it at all. It doesn't matter what we put in a channel before. So the main thing why we doing this approach is that we use the amount of channel is buffer channel, the buffer amount of value 10 or maybe 3 or 5 or 2. It depends on maximum value of HTTP connections. And actually it allows us to control the bottleneck. The only one bottleneck in this task is just to not overfit the amount of HTTP connections. So we use it as we put first value on channel, we put second value on channel, and oops, while we didn't get the first value from the channel back, we can't put the third value on channel of buffer size 2. And that's that's the way why we use the channels. Maybe looks like it not the ways they was invented to be used. So we actually do not use the value on channel, we just use the behavior of its buffered nature. But let me show how it will work. For example, on emulating mock, each second will start next chunk. And by chunks of 2, yummy, through go 1, 2, 3, 4, and blah blah blah. And each second, you see, 2 next elements was asked. And finally, we have this way: 1, 2 on first second, 3, 4 on second, 5, 6 on third second, and so on. And this is the same result as we have with future implementation, not Go block by future implementation. Let me run it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6, yeah, and so on. Yep, the same behavior. But what's the difference? Why and maybe when should we prefer Go blocks and when should we prefer future blocks? Again, all of you who are decided to think it by yourself, please stop the video and think a little bit, and I may continue and explain you my thoughts on it. First of all, Go block utilizes internal built-in thread pool, so it's very effective of using threads, and it uses threads dependent and relying on hardware of current machine and other optimizations, and every time when we may use Go block, we maybe better to use it. But it has some limitations. For example, on this machine, internal thread pool has limitations of 8 threads. But if we, for some reason, I don't know, have to have 10 parallel implementations of HTTP connections of requests, we can do it this way, and let's see what will be done with go block. The same, run 22 times. Oh, only 8, only 16. Yep, let's see again by the numbers. From 1 to 8, first second, only 8 parallel requests. And then from 9 to 16 on second, it's only next 8 requests. And third chunk with remaining amount of requests on the third second. Yep. So while we have the channel buffer of 10, anyway, go block limits us by amount of 8. It depends on current system settings. But with implementation of Rail future Rail thread, we can see how it will be done. Let's show. Oh, first 10 requests, second 10 requests, and last 2 requests. First second chunk of from 1 to 10 requests, and again next second is from 11 up to 12, and only 2 last requests on the third second. So that's the differences. But the main point I try to explain you is that we can use channels maybe not for the purposes they was invented for, but for other reasons. They are also quite usable and convenient. For example, buffered channel can limit our parallel actions. Very nice, and it doesn't matter which values we actually put on the channel, because we then just get them and forget about them. So that's all for today's nail. See you on the next one.